Hey, welcome to Woolly Minded. I'm Bee, and this is where I talk about knitting and crochet. And today I want to talk about microtrends that we've seen in 2025 when it comes to crochet. Because for me, 2025 has had a lot of microtrends, to the point that I was looking back through my Ravelry queue and favorites and things and just kept thinking like, oh wow, that was last year. And it's like, no, it was this year. It was February. There have been a lot of patterns that have kind of caught on and just filled my feed and then just disappeared again. And I am very much a creature of the algorithm, and I'm always drawn to the new shiny thing. So I've attempted a few of these myself as well. And I think some of these are definitely micro trends, like they've already been and gone. Like we saw this rise and fall already this year. Some of them I think have the potential to turn into bigger trends. And I'm going to do a video a bit later in the year as well to talk about what I think the big trends of this year so far have been. I'm going to start off with one that is definitely a micro trend that I myself participated in. It's the bear glasses case, which also came, I think, in dog form and in cat form, and maybe in frog form. And this was at the start of the year when Donald Trump announced that TikTok would be banned and then that it was unbanned again. And basically in between him announcing those two things, a lot of people kind of freaked out about TikTok no longer being available in the US and started migrating over to Red Note, which I think is like, even though TikTok is Chinese, I think it's a Chinese version of TikTok. And on Red Note, there was a crochet creator who had created these glasses cases. You can completely see why this caught on and why suddenly like everyone was making their own glasses case. I myself made one. I made it for my partner for Valentine's Day to look like our dog. Here it is. Here she is. Yeah, and I think that this was such a fun little trend, and there have been glasses cases for a long time, but one of the things I really admire that I think you see a lot with Chinese crocheters, but also South Korean crocheters, is just the extra bit of whimsy that comes into a lot of the designs they make and everything. And yeah, this one in particular, I just thought, what a fun, cute, quirky take on a fairly innocuous thing. There was some controversy about who the original creator was. I'm not going to go into that because I don't have any of the receipts. But I think that it's clear why this caught on and why it was so popular for a while, in that it felt like quite a weird, difficult time, even if you weren't based in the US, you know? Like the new Trump administration was coming in, everything felt very up in the air. A lot of people seem to be feeling very kind of like desperate and pressed by things, and to have a kind of note of cute whimsy in the middle of all that, like delightful. You can also see why it was a micro trend, because how many glasses cases do any of us need? Everyone made it, and then you don't really need to make another one. Second micro trend, looks like knit. I think it's been a thing for a while in crochet that people are always interested in crochet stitches that can be made to look like knitwear. I think for a number of reasons, you know, like knitting takes a lot longer than crochet to make something of a similar size. So anything where you can speed up the process and end up with a garment that looks like it's knitted, I think is interesting to people. There's also a bit of a problem with crochet that a lot of it's quite stiff, especially garments, and it can be difficult for people to get the drape they want. You know, a lot of time, like crochet kind of like tops and jumpers can feel very constricting. So I think that anything that achieves the drape that people are interested in is always going to kind of excite some attention. One thing that does intrigue me is that we are increasingly seeing drapey kind of looks like knit garments that are very clearly crochet. You know, it used to, like in previous years, whenever I've seen anything that's held up as like, it looks like knitwear, but it's actually crochet, it's been designed to look almost as much like a knit stitch as possible. Whereas now I think we're seeing people kind of accept the limitations, but also the benefits of crochet. You know, like it does provide a stiffer fabric. You can do some very, very interesting things with kind of like waves, with cables, things like that. I think in particular, the Baimia tank by Nomad Stitches, I think is a very interesting example of that, where at first glance it looks like knitwear and it's got a lot of drape and shape to it, the way that you'd expect with knitwear. But I think the crochet is doing really interesting things with that stitch. And I think also the Picot Vest by Marta Porcel, another one that at first glance looks like knitwear, but has a lot of structure to it that the crochet is giving it, and it doesn't actually look like it's deliberately designed to deceive, if that makes sense. And yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. And I also think that it's quite interesting that we're seeing people make a lot of crochet tops out of fibers that wouldn't normally be kind of considered for crochet wearables, but work very well to help it look like knitwear. So for example, we have the Charlotte cardigan by Nikita Obey. And I think by doing it in this really soft mohair, like you can crochet that and you're still going to get the drape of knitwear. All right, so this is an amigurumi one. The animal of this year, I think it's a fun animal on its own. It's an animal that hasn't really had the spotlight for a few years, but I also think it says something about how crochet is perceived, and particularly about how some crocheters perceive their own work. So it's Octopus, or octopi. And we're seeing these guys everywhere. And it's not the first animal I would have predicted for this year to be a little bit of a kind of, that there would be an explosion of patterns around this. And it does feel like it's been the last few months that it's really become noticeable. But yeah, not an animal that lends itself necessarily to cuteness. And normally the kind of animals that we see becoming popular and having like this kind of like moment in the sun are very traditionally cute animals, bees, bunnies, cats, things like that. And also, it's not an animal that you would expect to be popular in terms of, it's not an easy animal to do simply, is it? Like a lot of the animals we've seen having their own, like turtles, for example, you can just make it like that is basically just a series of blocks sewn together. Like it's very beginner friendly. And I think that one of the reasons I think that Octopus is becoming so popular, beyond the fact it's having a bit of a moment in kind of pop culture in general, is I feel like it's maybe a tiny bit of a pushback against the perception of amigurumi that some people have, that it's very simple, like a lot of dismissive, sneering comments are made about crochet bees, for example, like the ubiquitous bee is at every single craft fair. And I know a lot of people, including myself, have expressed concerns over how like commercial a lot of crochet is becoming and how there seems to be this very kind of direct pipeline to the point of, is it a pipeline or is it just a doorway of beginners start to crochet and immediately are just flogging chenille bees, whereas an octopus, that is like a very like that's skill, and it takes a lot of commitment, all the legs, and it's just something that kind of like shows your skill and your development as a crochet designer, but also just as a crocheter in general. That said, I don't necessarily see this being a long-term trend. Like I love it that it is, and anyone who loves octopus, like you are very well set up now, like there are loads and loads of patterns for you, but yeah, I'm kind of expecting there to be another animal of the moment this year. Absolutely no idea what it will be. I would not have predicted octopuses, so it could be anything. I feel like maybe we could be seeing a kind of moment for like a sloth or something. And maybe a caterpillar, because there's been so much crochet caterpillar stuff. I'm not including caterpillar as a mini trend, as a micro trend for this, but if caterpillars become the next crochet animal of the moment, I'm claiming this one. In the world of amigurumi, I feel kind of smug about this one because it wasn't my trend video from earlier in the year, but yeah, giant amigurumi, they're a thing. I thought they were going to be a bigger trend than they have been. I thought we were going to be seeing more of them, but we have seen a lot. I love the giant worm someone did, but yeah, we've seen the big mushrooms. I'm sure I've seen like a massive bee somewhere. Like it's very kind of like squishmallow and up sizing. And I thought this was going to be more of a trend because I thought that we were going to be seeing partly more kind of like a kind of fall off in interest in crochet businesses, and a lot of people who've invested a lot in lots of yarn kind of having nothing to do with that yarn, or realizing just like they'd kind of like overconsumed, had too much yarn. And obviously a giant amigurumi is a good way to use it up. And also I figured a giant amigurumi is a good way to attract attention. If you have a crochet business and you have a crochet stall at a market, what's going to gain attention other than quicker than a giant worm or a giant mushroom or something on your stall, and then you're selling the mini versions? And I still think that's a good idea, but the crochet markets I have seen this year have not done that at all. And that's why I'm putting this down as a micro trend. We are seeing people doing it. We are seeing enough people that it is a kind of a tiny trend, but I don't think it's going to be quite the big trend I was expecting. We have a micro trend that I've jumped on and one that I will never jump on. So the one I jumped on, which is absolutely a thing this summer, I feel like we are right in the middle of it. It's very much everywhere. Fillet crochet. Every single summer you see fillet crochet come around. Like it is a thing. But this year, I feel like we are just seeing it to such a more intense level. Like every year I see like a couple of shawls getting quite popular. You'll see like one or two tops. This year, I feel like it's everywhere. I'm seeing it on every single social media platform. We're seeing video creators make entire series about fillet crochet. I myself am trying a version of it because I saw just like a skein of cotton and I bought a 1.5 crochet hook, which feels very intense. And I'm making this, which is going to be a shirt at some point, but I didn't buy enough cotton, so I need to go back and get some more. We're seeing sets in it as well. Like we're seeing like an entire dress. We're seeing the skirt and the top. Even though I'm saying it's a massive trend, I'm putting this one down as a micro trend because anything that just lasts for one season, I still count as a micro trend. If this makes its way into autumn, if people start doing kind of Halloween decorations, which I think could be really cool, like cobwebs and pumpkins and things, or if people start doing like Christmas, like maybe snowflakes and stuff, then I'm going to count it as a trend for this year. But right now I see it more as a kind of, it's a trend for the spring, summer. Not even for the spring, it's a trend for the summer. And then one which I will never try, but I'm very glad exists, but I just know myself and I know my ability to commit to a project like this, is what I'm calling maximalist mosaic. And this is big, busy mosaic. Like there is not like you don't get more than 4 stitches in a row of the same color with this stuff. It's mainly blankets that I'm seeing it as, but I have seen a lot of cardigans and bags in it as well. And I think some in particular that have caught my eye have been the Nordic Bloom by Marissa Tatemeyer. I mean, this is fabulous and so detailed and so something I would never ever attempt, but it's gorgeous, isn't it? So there's a crochet along happening at the minute called the Spring Garden Mosaic Cow. Once again, stunning. I mean, look at the detail on that. And it's such a nice way of using variegated wool as well, which I feel like we haven't seen many trends in the crochet world of using variegated wool. So it's interesting to see that. Oh my God. And the Andromeda Mosaic as well by Silverhook Crochet. Part of me wants to put these down as just a trend for the year, knowing how long they will take. But these already have so many projects attached to them. Like people are making them and then moving on and making another one. So I'm temporarily putting them down as a micro trend. I think it'll depend on what happens in autumn, winter. Because just as Fillet crochet is something that I see a little bit of every single year around this time of year, mosaic I don't normally see until the winter months. So I'm very intrigued and surprised and enjoying the fact that it's making its way into summer as well. And I do have a bit of a theory about this, that just as the octopus is a kind of pushback against the simplification with the bees, part of me wonders if mosaic crochet is a little bit of a kind of pushback or a reaction to how popular tapestry crochet was last year. Because a lot of tapestry crochet, which I've done myself and, you know, enjoy looking at and regularly just scroll that tag on Insta and stuff, but it can be quite simplistic and it can be very in the moment. You know, it's very kind of like meme heavy. The tapestry crochet world, you know, you see a lot of like Good Luck Babe and the kind of the dumpster fire and ones like that where it's kind of like very it's a joke of the moment. And mosaic is such a like long-term commitment and it's so detailed in comparison to a lot of tapestry crochet or the tapestry crochet that becomes popular and is very visible. I do wonder if, like the bees, tapestry crochet has kind of spawned more of an interest in people looking for something a lot more complicated, a much bigger commitment, a lot more detail. I don't know, just a thought I'm having. And the last micro trend that I was going to point out, which I think we have seen the beginning of and the end of, like I think we are in the final days of this micro trend, is the flower blanket. And it's the one where you kind of, when it's laid out flat, it's a normal round blanket with flowers all around the edges. And then when you roll it up, it looks like you're carrying a bouquet of flowers. And part of me absolutely loves this and thinks it's so kind of clever. And I love the coasters that were all the thing last year, with the little flowers around it and everything. And I think it's quite funny and cute. And it's definitely in that same world of the coasters that are designed to like, they look like leaves of a cactus. And then when you put them in the pot, they look like a little cactus plant on its own. The blanket, I think, has a limited shelf life just because of practicality. Just looking at it and just looking at the construction of it, I don't necessarily know that this is the most practical blanket for a start in terms of the design. So the nature of the blanket is that you basically start by doing the most boring thing, and you do the boring thing and the boring thing of just going round and round and round and round until you do the flowers. And I think anyone who picks up this design or this project is waiting to do the flowers. Like that's the fun bit. That's the bit they want to do. So I'm noticing a lot of these blankets, which are pretty small for a blanket. And I completely get that. I would be the same way if I attempted this. You know, it's kind of like when you're starting off and 89% of a project is just doing the boring bit before you get to the fun bit. I can see why these blankets are getting pretty small. Also, when you see these blankets presented, it's not completely clear how they fit into anyone's home. Because if they just get chucked on a bed, then flowers get crushed. If they're draped on a chair, that can be a bit awkward to sit on because the flowers are quite big in 3D. And it's just not something, it's something that looks very, very stunning. And I really enjoy looking at them and stuff. But I'm not sure how much it fits into people's lives. Like I would be astonished if the flower blanket sticks around the way that, say, the 6-Day Star blanket has. Because the 6-Day Star blanket, you can chuck it on a chair, you can sit on it, you can have it on your bed amongst loads of the blankets. It's not getting in the way. It's becoming part of the home very quickly. It's easy to snuggle under, whereas the flower blanket, it just feels like they're naturally small. They're naturally likely to get in the way or get crushed or look a little bit out of place. I don't know, maybe I'm a cynic, but I'm seeing less and less of them appearing on my feeds now. And I think it's a micro trend, but we'll see. And if you've attempted one, let me know how you found it, because maybe I'm being overly cynical about the making process being quite frustrating, and also the practicality of like, where does this fit into your home? Maybe I've got it wrong. So that's it from me. Any micro trends that I've missed? Any that you feel like, no, that's definitely just like a full-on long-term trend? Am I being too cynical about some of these? Are we going to see more giant amigurumi? But this is it from me. I'm going to do a knit version of this as well in a couple of weeks. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that, then please subscribe. Also like, also just do whatever you want. Bye.